Rising more than 11,000 feet into the sky, Mountain dominates the Oregon landscape with its snow-capped peak, dense forests, and unpredictable alpine weather. It's a place of raw, untamed beauty, a magnet for hikers, climbers, and adventurers drawn to its challenging terrain and breathtaking views. But nature doesn't make promises. The same slopes that offer peace and perspective can also turn dangerous in an instant. Today, we're diving into the true story of a woman who found herself trapped on this towering volcano, caught between the allure of the mountain and the harsh reality of its elements. This is a story about survival, the power of nature, and how quickly a serene hike can turn into a life-threatening ordeal on Oregon's most iconic peak. Welcome to Risky Reality, where risks become reality. Before I start the video, don't forget to like this video and to subscribe to the channel. For now, let's continue the video. Some people spend their lives uncertain of their purpose. But for Mary Grimm, there was never any doubt. From a young age, she knew she was meant to serve. Her calling came from God, and she was drawn to missionary work. It wasn't just a dream, it was a mission. Mary was a woman of intellect, strength, and deep conviction. She earned a degree in linguistics, fascinated by the power of words, but instead of pursuing academia or business, she chose to use her gift to bring sacred scripture to people in far-off corners of the world who had never held a Bible in their own language. Her journey began on a school trip to Mexico, but it was her later trips to Papua New Guinea that really changed her. There, among isolated tribal communities, Mary found something that spoke to her soul, a connection to nature, humanity, and the divine. Her father once said, she was sure of two things. God had called her to be a missionary, and she never wanted to wear shoes again. From that moment on, Mary walked barefoot whenever she could, feeling the earth beneath her feet as a reminder of the path she had chosen. But it wasn't just her faith that grounded Mary. She had a deep love for nature, too. The wilderness made her feel more alive, more connected to something greater. She spent much of her time hiking, climbing, and exploring remote peaks. It was during one of these adventures, in 2010, while hiking the Pacific Crest Trail, that she first set eyes on Mount Hood. At 11,249 feet, Mount Hood is Oregon's highest peak, a stunning, snow-covered volcano that looms over the landscape. Its beauty was striking, but it was something more. Mary felt an undeniable pull toward it. To her, it wasn't just a mountain, it was an invitation. And she knew one day she had to reach its summit. But as with most things in life, there were obstacles. Weather delays, schedule conflicts, and safety concerns kept pushing her plans back. Each cancellation left her feeling frustrated, but in the spring of 2013, she made a choice. When yet another trip fell through, this time because Afrian backed out, Mary decided she would go alone. On a chilly Saturday morning in April, Mary woke before dawn in her dorm room. Her partner had mailed the night before, suggesting they cancel because of the weather. But Mary, tired of disappointment, refused to give up. She drove to Mount St. Helens first to test her gear, occasional adjustments to her pack. Then, without telling anyone, she drove on to Mount Hood. She arrived late that day and parked at Timberline Lodge, a historic alpine retreat at about 6,000 feet. She slept in the back of her truck, planning to start her climb at first light. But things didn't go as planned. She woke up late, nearly 10 a.m., and by the time she started her climb, the weather had already begun to shift. The first part of the climb was straightforward. The snow was firm, and the path was clear. But as she ascended, the mountain began to change. The clouds thickened, the temperature dropped, and the wind picked up. Mary pressed forward, determined to reach the summit. Then, visibility dropped to just 50 feet. The mist turned into a freezing fog that clung to her gear. She knew it was dangerous, but she refused to stop. She was so close. She kept climbing, convinced the summit was just ahead. But the mountain had a surprise in store. A sudden gust of wind cleared the fog for a moment, and that's when she saw it, a massive ice-covered cliff, just steps away. Her heart pounded as she realized how close she had come to falling. Worse, she realized she had veered off the main trail. Panic set in. The fog thickened again, and snow began to fall. Her tracks vanished within minutes, and she had no idea which way to go. Desperate, Mary tried to figure out the best way down. She threw snowballs down the slope to see which way they rolled, hoping they'd lead her to safety. But that plan failed when she nearly fell into a hidden crevice, deep and wide enough to be fatal. Shivering, soaked, and terrified, Mary knew she had to stop moving. It was around 2 a.m. by then. She found the most sheltered spot she could, laid out her tarp, and wrapped herself in her poncho, trying to sleep. But she was unaware of the even greater dangers that lay ahead. When Mary Grimm opened her eyes the next morning, everything had changed. The entrance to her makeshift shelter was almost completely buried under fresh snow. The mountain was eerily still, and its silence felt more like a graveyard than a sanctuary. Mary knew she couldn't stay here much longer. Her only chance was to reach a nearby ridge, one she hoped might be visible from the air. With her tarp wrapped tightly around her for warmth, she began crawling upward, dragging herself through the deep snow. The slope was steep, and every movement took incredible effort. Her limbs were sore, and her energy was running out. Using her ice axe for support, she struggled up the mountain. But then, disaster struck. Mary drove her axe into the frozen ground, but it didn't hold. She slipped. Her fall was violent. Rocks and debris slammed into her as she tumbled down the mountainside. When she finally stopped, the pain was delayed, but it soon hit. A deep, 8-inch gash on hair in her thigh, and the pounding throb of a damaged ankle. Worse still, she couldn't walk, and Noon even knew she was there. Mary had made a fatal mistake. She hadn't told anyone where she was going. Alone, injured, freezing, her only option was to stay put and hope someone would find her. She used her good foot to carve a small hollow in the snow, making a tiny shelter. Inside, she wrapped herself in her poncho and tarp, trying to block out the pain. But as the hours dragged in, the cold gnawed at her resolve. She feared she wouldn't survive the night. In the desperate hope of saying goodbye, Mary set up her camera. She recorded messages to her loved ones, her voice shaking from the cold and fear. Soon, though, the shivers took over, and she drifted into unconsciousness. When she woke, it was Tuesday. Her body was stiff. Her water had frozen, and her spirit was fading. Using all the strength she had left, she melted snow to drink. She called out for help, her voice dry and raw, but no one came. Time seemed to stretch on forever. Then, on Friday morning, she heard it, a plane. She dragged herself out of her shelter and waved frantically, screaming with whatever energy she had left. The plane flew overhead, and for a moment, hope surged in her. But it faded as the plane disappeared. Evening came, and no one arrived. What Mary didn't know was that this plane was part of the first official search effort. Her friends had realized something was wrong when she stopped answering calls and texts. After a few conversations, someone had reported her missing. But the mountain was huge, and the search teams only had a vague idea of where to look. On Saturday morning, a miracle arrived. Mary heard a deep hum, something mechanical. It was a helicopter. She dragged herself into the open, waving with all her might, praying she wasn't imagining it. And then she saw it, a rescue helicopter descending from the ridge like a guardian angel. 2 rescuers ran toward her through the snow. One knelt beside her, offering to carry her, but Mary shook her head. "I'll crawl," she whispered. The rescuer, showing quiet respect, crawled beside her. That small act of solidarity made her smile for the first time in days. Minutes later, she was airlifted to safety. At the hospital, doctors treated her injuries. She would walk again, and her body would heal, but she would carry a scar for the rest of her life. Not just in her leg, but deep in her memory. A constant reminder of the mountain, the pain, and the incredible strength she found within herself. Mary Grimm survived one of the most harrowing ordeals anyone could imagine. And in the end, the mountain tested not just her body, but her spirit, and what she found wasn't just faith. She found herself. Mary's story is a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, we have the strength to endure. Her journey through the snow-covered peaks of Mount Hood taught her more than just survival. It revealed her resilience and determination. Sometimes, the most difficult paths lead us to discover who we truly are. Thank you for watching. If you found Mary's story inspiring, please like, share, and subscribe for more incredible tales of survival, strength, and the human spirit. And remember, no matter the challenges life throws at you, you are never truly alone on the climb. Until next time.